talks about them not being slaves to righteousness. They can't be. It's impossible. Don't expect your non-Christian friends to act like Christians or your non-Christian family members. I can't believe they could do that. Well, they're not Christians. They can do worse. All right. So I'm in there, and this guy's talking, and he's being foul. And finally, he was like, I get through my day, and he's like, man, with enough beer and with enough liquor, and just naming different sins that he loves. And I just simply was like, yeah, and that's how you get addicted to. That simple. And he just was like, yeah. He sort of looked down, and that ended the conversation. Like, he didn't want to talk to me anymore. But at the same time, I just had to speak truth into that rather than just letting him go on and on. And I had to. That is how you get addicted. And I have friends who have overdosed on heroin, ended up in the hospital, emptied bank accounts because of crack cocaine, drunken themselves into, passing out and having the paramedics pick them up, and on and on and on. Okay, guys stealing money off their family members and their best friends to buy more heroin. Right? Let me borrow money. I got to do. They totally lied, took the money, bought heroin. Okay, so I understand the addiction thing, and this guy is just, either he does get it or he doesn't, but he needs to be reminded of truth. Now, I wasn't mean about it. I was just like, yeah, that's how you get addicted to, man. And so you have opportunities to do this sort of interjecting truth all the time. And here's what I would do. This is some application. Ask God, like when you're talking to an unbeliever. I'll tell you what, I was with this guy last night for about, 4 or 5 hours. And the whole time I'm praying, God, please give me something to say to this guy. Like, please help me to witness to him. Like, I bought a Bible and went there with it with the intent of giving it to him. The opportunity didn't open for me to give him the Bible. However, I'm going back and I'm going to hang out with him some more, like purposefully. It's very purposeful. I love this guy. He was a friend I used to write graffiti with, and he's just messed up. So looking for opportunities, and while you're talking to unbelievers, praying for opportunity to say something. And believe me, if God's working in that person's heart, you saying that one thing will make them say something else. Okay? That's usually how I judge if God's working on someone's heart, because I'll say something and then they will respond back with something that continues the conversation. There's been times where I've tried to push it on people. You guys ever do that? And it's just not going anywhere. Like, there was this one guy I was in a restaurant with, and he was just talking and talking and talking to me. This guy had the gift of talking, right? And I'm just listening. And finally, I'm like, do you go to church anywhere? He's like, yeah, I go to St. Mary's. And then boom, right on to baseball again. And he's talking and he's talking and he's talking. I'm just like, so what do you think about Jesus? And I'm like, oh, he's cool. And boom, just back on to baseball. And like, I tried like 3 or 4 times to turn the conversation to spiritual things. Like, even he was talking about how he's afraid of death. And I'm like, dude, if you know Jesus, you don't have to be afraid to die. Boom, back on to baseball. I'm not going to push it any more than 4 or 5 times. You know what I'm saying? And so if God's not working in the heart, remember John chapter 6, verse 44 is a key verse, man. No one comes to the Father unless the Spirit who sent me draws him. And if God's drawing the person, you might say, yeah, and that's how you get addicted. And boom, a whole conversation opens up. And so all I'm saying is you guys just be ready when you're lying down, when you're getting up, when you're going along your day, working or whatever you do, golfing. I mean, I don't know what you guys do every day. Whatever you do, just be looking for opportunities and be praying simple prayers like, God, make me ready, right? Be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within you. That's 1 Peter 3:15. And then do this with gentleness and respect. And so just because you're not a teacher and you don't have the official teaching gift, if you will, you do have the responsibility to be teaching, especially if you're parents, right? In Timothy, Paul instructs Timothy, like, the older women should be teaching the younger women. Okay? It doesn't say anything about the older women with a teaching gift. We all teach all the time. We really do. And so I just want to say, be ready, know your stuff, read, be constantly in prayer, and be ready when God gives you an opportunity. I think I was talking to Heather one time, and she was, you care if I tell a story about you? All right. Oftentimes I'm actually telling stories about you guys, but I say someone, and it's actually you, and only you know who I'm talking about. So Heather, I'm talking to her one time, and she's telling me that she was at a drug house, I think it was, and before you know it, like the guy who she went with to pick up drugs, and she didn't know he was going to pick up drugs, right? Okay, she's teaching Jesus to the guys on the steps, and he comes out like, right? Like, do you just want to tell the story yourself, or?
Well, it was an ex-boyfriend, and we went out on a date. So I just keep thinking that God's going to turn him. I don't know why I'm doing that. But anyway, I usually end up somewhere where I shouldn't be. So we were supposed to be going out, and he had to go out to export. So he said, we'll only be there for a minute. And I said, okay. I said, we'll just, as long as there's not drugs in the car, as long as there's not drugs in the house, I don't care. Well, there was. So we get there, and he said, well, you'll be okay. He left me on the porch with his brother. He's watching out the window to make sure I'm okay. And he goes inside. And I started talking to the guys on the porch. And he keeps looking outside and checking on me and asking if I'm okay. And I said, that's fine. So he comes out. I ended up the one guy's daughter and like his brother had just been shot to death. He was like suicidal. The other one was like coming out of rehab. And they started asking me questions, and like by the end of it, we were all like praying on the porch.
Oh, wow. All right, amen.
My boyfriend came out, our ex-boyfriend came out, and he's like, these guys taught me how to sell drugs. These men have spent like 20 years in prison. And here's Heather evangelizing everybody on the porch. He's like, just get in the car.
Yeah. Now, I don't recommend that. Like, if Heather would have came to me first and said, hey, I'm thinking about going, I'd be like, don't go. Like, Heather, don't go, right? Don't do it. However, she was in the situation without asking counsel. Kidding. That's what it looks like, though, for real. It's like you're in a situation, you're always going to be there. Don't be repulsed when, there is a certain party that's like, oh, my goodness. I wasn't happy when the guy started listing his sins off to me. It didn't make me happy. However, I wasn't happy last night walking through my buddy's house and just seeing his house is a wreck, his life's a wreck. He's wrecking vehicles. Sin is tearing his life apart, and he needs Jesus. Okay, so I'm not happy about that. But at the same time, realize they're unbelievers. They're not going to act like believers. Okay, and they don't have the power to act like believers. All right, so let me read it one more time, and then we'll move out of Deuteronomy 6. We're actually doing really good on time. This is good. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the door frames of your houses and your gates, and then boom, I'm done. All right, I'm stopping there. I have friends who take this literally, and they literally have scripture on the door frames. They literally have it all over their house. They write it on their hands. Whatever. I don't think it's literal. However, you want to go there, I'm not going to say probably not a good idea to put scripture on your door frames. Do it. It's pretty cool. All right. You guys all see the little signs out in front of Christians' houses that say, God bless this home or whatever, a little passage of scripture. There's a little practical application there. All right. Next one, let's do Acts 18. I like Acts. And then we'll finish up with Jesus because he's one of the best ones to look at as far as teaching goes. Right?
Pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah.
All right, Acts 18. I love this guy right here who we're about to talk about. Acts 18:24. Everyone there? All right. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, it's just a great name, Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures. One of the versions says he was mighty in the Scriptures. Like, if you had that description, like, oh, this is my buddy Jeff, he's mighty in the Scriptures. That's just a sweet, subtitle to your name. Right? Here's Apollos, a man mighty in the Scriptures. I love this guy already. All right, so he comes to Ephesus. He's a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures. Now remember, this is Acts. Jesus just left. What are they talking about? Old Testament. right? No New Testament yet. No Gospels yet. So this guy knew his Old Testament well. And remember, Jesus is all through the Old Testament.